Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So now we are in the fourth series of our video. We're going to talk about improved phase deliverables. So far we have covered define phase, where we talk about some tools on what is the problem about. Then we look at measure phase, where we talk about some tools in there regarding how big is the problem, especially on your current process capability or current sigma level. Then we looked at analyze phase. This is one of the challenging phase, where we looked at some tools where we can start looking at how to identify the vital factors, and at the same time, what are the difference between graphic analysis and statistical analysis. So now is where you can put your innovative minds together. You can come into improve phase with your project, and there are some deliverables that you have to present in your project. And in this case, this is where a lot of lean tools are applied as well as a solution. At the same time, brainstorming is applied to your project solutions as well. Now, before we go into further, let's look at the slide again. I'll give you a minute to have a look at the slide, and we'll talk about the tools in improve phase. Okay, so looking at the tools earlier in the slide, we noticed that you can bring your project charter. Now in this case, after your analyze phase, your project charter is generally finalized already. Means that at this stage there shouldn't be any more changes because you're already looking at solutions that you can implement. Next, for each identified vital factor, you can identify solutions. Now normally for any causes that you have choose as a vital factor, you can identify several solutions, and we have to use solution selection metrics for each of the vital factor. Now why is this the case? Because there will be some solutions that you have identified may be too expensive to be implemented, or may not have management approval for it, or there could be other reasons why the particular solution cannot be implemented. Now in this case, we use solution selection metrics, where we identify all the solutions for each of the vital factor, and then we prioritize accordingly. You will also need to be able to identify any showstoppers. Means that for a particular solution there may be a showstopper, and justify the reason why the solution cannot be implemented. Otherwise, this tool is very useful to stratify all your solutions for each of the vital factor and look at prioritizing which one that can be implemented. Then you bring back again your as is and should be process map. Now the reason is that if there is a change in the process itself, then you need to identify where the change is. Sometimes we do have situations where the process does not change even though you have some solutions. So in this case, what you need to do is just identify in which step of the process the solution will be implemented. So at least everybody, the audience, the stakeholders will know that your solution that you have identified will be implemented at that particular location of the process. Otherwise, normally if you have a lot of changes to your process steps itself, then you will have to redraw the entire new process map and show that to the stakeholders. Again, with the solutions that you have identified, you need to be able to show cost benefit analysis. Now in this, similar to define phase, where you have to identify what are the savings that are going to be achieved, and at this stage you are fairly confident of the savings. You must get real data from finance to be able to justify the savings. And in this phase itself, you will have to identify whether capex is required, what is the internal rate of return, payback period, ROI on any of the solutions that are going to be implemented. Again, for the chosen solutions, you have to do a risk assessment. Generally we use FMEA again, but this time we're not looking at the process steps, we're looking at each process, each solution actually, beg your pardon, to be able to identify what are the failure effect and also how severe is the failure effect, the occurrence and detection. Just similar how we used FMEA earlier, but in this case we use it for the solution itself. Finally, you need to be able to identify for the chosen solutions, how are you going to conduct the pilot. Now, pilot is actually where you don't implement any changes yet, but you choose an area, a small little area or a solution at a very small scale to be implemented. For example, if you got a solution where it involves IT, and then instead of changing the entire system in the company, then we don't do that yet at this stage. What we do is that we do a pilot study. We just take one little department or one small area, and we change the IT system there and test the system. So if there's any changes that need to be done later, it can be easily implemented. So pilot plan is very important in improve phase. We need to show that, when are we going to do the change, where is it going to be, who's responsible for it, and what results do we expect from the pilot study. So, and then we also show if the pilot is successful, how do we apply the solutions throughout the organization. So solution implementation plan is important. Now, in a lot of times in solution implementation plan, not always your solutions will be based on just IT solutions, something we can brainstorm as many solutions. And generally in Lean Six Sigma, your first point of call actually is to identify lean solutions. So as I mentioned earlier, lean solutions, you can apply them in manufacturing or service sector. For example, one tool is Pokayoke. Pokayoke stands for mistake proving. So you can apply mistake proving tools or Pokayoke tools in manufacturing, where you can have a sensor or something to stop the process altogether if you have a defect. In service industry, the same. You can use, for example, an IT system here to identify a problem in the process, and that will stop that particular process from going to the next stage. So pilot and solution implementation is very important. You can use a lot of lean tools here, which again, there's not enough time to cover today on all the lean tools. There are plenty more. For example, 5S, Kanban, SMED. Okay. So there are many other tools as well, and a lot of it is common sense approach normally. There are cases where solution implementation plan requires CapEx, capital expenditure. So we do have to justify that as well. As long as we justify the savings are there, the return period, the payback period is short, then we can justify in a Six Sigma project. Then we also have, if you're going to change the process, obviously we need to have a training or communication plan. We need to communicate what change is going to happen in the organization as a result of this project. What training is required. If there's a new process or new machinery or new system that we're going to bring in, we must be able to identify a training plan and how to communicate these changes accordingly. And also at the same time, the project timing plan, will just do it activity. You will still identify some just do it activities as well. Could be just some simple changes that you can implement in the process, which may not need to subject to further study. As such, with the solution selection matrix, then we can just implement that. Any savings from that is still attributable to this project, and we can talk about issue, barrier, and challenges and summary in this stage as well. Now, a lot of time you will notice that especially for black belt projects, DOE stands for Design of Experiment. So if it's a manufacturing related project, then you will have sometimes a multiple input or output. So therefore, we need to be able to do a design of experiments to get the maximum possible setting for that particular output. This is optional depending on project basis. If the project requires a DOE to be conducted, then obviously then it must be done and shown as a pilot study as well. So in general, improve phase is where you put your innovative hats on. You'll be able to look at project charter if there's any changes, or finalize charter in this stage. Then brainstorm at all the solutions that you can think of for the vital factors only, and we encourage the use of lean tools at this stage, and that could be part of solution selection matrix. The process map itself, you can bring it back again into improve phase and show how the should be process map any changes to the process, as well as if there's any solutions that can be implemented. The process may not have changed, but the solution is impacting one of the process steps, then we can show that in the process map. Cost benefit analysis, obviously this is where you're going to show to the management that there's going to be significant expenditure on this, let's say, but the returns are there for the particular project, so we have to justify that in improve phase. Risk assessment, of course we don't want to have a solution that will have us more problems later, so we have to risk assess the solution as well, and the pilot plan how the solutions can be implemented at a smaller scale first. The reason we do pilot is so that to do undo changes is easy, and how we're going to solution how the solution is going to be implemented company wide as well. We need to have a plan for that. Training or communication is important because the training plan will give us some idea of what training is going to be involved for the particular process or some changes to infrastructure, let's say, and how we're going to communicate that. And then we need to revise the timing plan if there's any, especially in this case, timing plan is more on how long it's going to take the solutions to be implemented or even the pilot to be implemented. And we talk about issue, barrier, challenges, and design experiments can be optional too at this stage depending on the project. So thank you for listening for improve phase. The next video will speak about, we will talk about control phase tools as well. Thank you.